So where was the humbling moment for you? When was the moment for you that said, fuck, Kris is not doing shit unless God is working through me? Like, doesn't matter how much money I have, doesn't matter how many people like me. At the core, I need just to accept that God is working through me.
Tucking my baby girl in at night as a 17-year-old, I looked down before I left the room and I saw an empty pill bottle. And I knew she had been depressed for 4 years. My wife and I were constantly worried about her. And I knew she was very depressed and in a very dark place. And I picked up the pill bottle and I said, "What is this?" And she admitted that she took all of the pills.
Welcome to the King's Court Podcast. My name is Raul Villacis, and today we have a very special guest. See, very few men build empires. And even fewer men build empires, but they find their purpose while doing it. And today, one of our guests is Krohn, and he's built a real estate empire, but at the same time, he's living his life with purpose because he understands that money is not the end goal, but who you become through this process. And today, we're gonna have Kris share with us his code of how to succeed, how to bring purpose to life, and most important, how to bring fulfillment. So, Kris, welcome to the King's Court Podcast, brother.
Raul, I appreciate it, brother. It was a pleasure to meet you this last month at Man in the Arena. And dude, let's go. Whatever value I can bring, let's do it.
See, I want to start by just acknowledging the fact that, man, you've done so much work in your life that it is impressive. It's impressive to actually see somebody not just talk about the things that they're doing, but actually live it. So let's go back to, you and I had a conversation about real estate, how you build your real estate empire. And your story is very similar to my story when it comes to like finding purpose beyond money. Because you go back into the real estate world and everything is about a transaction. So take us a little bit back about how you got started as a real estate investor. Tell me a little bit about your journey, how you began, and then we'll go all the way until the Man on the Arena stage.
All right. Sounds good. Well, listen, I think my story starts in college because I wanted to be a doctor. My dad told me as a German immigrant, as an entrepreneur and a business owner, he said, "Son, you don't want to be an entrepreneur. You should just get a good college education and then work for somebody else, and that's going to be best." Now, I'm from Redmond, Washington, where every other person, it seems, works at Microsoft. Every 10th person is a millionaire. And so my dad just saw all of these great paying tech jobs and just assumed that was going to be the best path for me. So in college, when I wanted to pursue being a doctor, two things happened. The first one is on the third day of college, I met the girl that I married 9 months later. And I literally fell in love with the love of my life. We've been married for 23 years. The second thing that happened is I started taking organic chemistry. And you need to get A's in these classes to get into medical school. I was getting C's. So I retook the class. I got a C minus. And that's when I realized this is not my path. I am not pursuing something that comes natural or easy to me. And that was heartbreaking, especially because I knew that when I was older, I was going to take care of my parents. So I was trying to figure out how to make money for my family and my parents. I started looking, Raul, at all the other college options. I looked at all the other job possibilities. I looked at all the careers, and they were all the same to me. $60,000 a year, $40,000 a year, $80,000 a year, $100,000 a year. And nothing stood out other than being like a doctor. And I just said, wait a second, this means that I'm going to spend all this money, 4 years, go to college, and I'm going to get a degree that I'm probably never going to earn better than average money with. But the moment that broke me, Raul, was when I came home. I knew I didn't want to be a doctor. I had been working this telemarketing job. I was a full-time student. I was going to school full-time while I worked full-time. And I didn't like my job. It was telemarketing. It was high-pressure sales. And so I was having a bad day back when I had those. I decided to go home and connect with my wife that I hardly saw. And I found her in our apartment in tears. And I knew something was very wrong. And when I asked her what was wrong, she said, "Well, Kris, we have tuition due in 3 weeks and we don't have the money. We have rent due in 5 days and we don't have the money." And then I found out that she was crying because she went grocery shopping and the check bounced for just trying to buy a few days worth of food. And my wife was hungry. And it was in that moment that I realized, oh my gosh, I'm on a crash course, just like my parents who always fought about money. I'm not solving it. College isn't going to solve it. My job isn't going to solve it. And it was that moment that I decided that I was willing to do whatever it took to not be in that situation. And if I were to fast forward 4 years later, I graduated college, I quit my job, and I retired on $150,000 a year passive income because my motivation led me to buy 25 homes with mostly other people's money, other people's credit, but those homes paid me $12,500 a month, and I didn't have to have a job anymore, and I was free. And so real estate for me really wasn't about investing in real estate. It was more about the idea that I was pissed. I'm pissed that society says, go to college, get a job, work for 40 years, have an 85% chance of not liking what you do, and then retiring poor. And I did real estate, not because I loved real estate. It's because it was a really practical vehicle to escape that game. I mean, I was done working at 26 years old because I didn't have to work anymore. And even though I found more purpose in life and figured out what I wanted to do, it didn't start from like a really altruistic place of wanting to be like it was trying to escape the drudgery of the 9 to 5 that I just couldn't sell my life short for 40 years being stuck in that game.
But isn't it crazy, Kris, how people are sold a dream or sold a story that this is what you have to do? That you have to go to you go to school, you have to get a good job, and you have to work from 9 to 5. And that's why I believe entrepreneurs, we're born. You know, you may not have thought that you were going to be an entrepreneur, but entrepreneurship comes from within. It's not something on the outside, but it has to do with solving a problem. So you had a problem to solve. And you need to solve the problem right away, which is money, right? But the telemarketing job that you had, that gave you some skills, because real estate is not just about, buying properties and selling properties. It's skills. So a lot of people who listen to this podcast, mostly are men who listen to this podcast, they're like, okay, got it. You retired 26, you made money. Tell me about the first deal, Kris. Tell me about the first deal that you're like, how did you go from barely paying your groceries to actually closing your first deal in real estate?
So I had a mentor. I've had 28 performance coaches in my life. This coach had made over $10 million in real estate. He came into my world really perfectly, and I just begged him. I said, hey, can I follow you around and learn from you? And I didn't pay him. He was just willing to let me be a protege. And I feel very lucky that I found this person, and they said, well, here's what you need to do. You need to save up $5,000 in the bank. You need to keep your job for another year. I know you don't like the job, but you need a 2-year work history, and I need you to get a couple more credit cards to finish developing your credit. 14 months later, I had $5,000 in the bank. I barely achieved my 2-year work history, and I had barely adequate credit. And he said, okay, now it's time to house hunt. So he was showing me more of a traditional path, but I found a week later a property. Like, God told me to drive home from work a weird, different way, and I did. And I saw this for sale by owner, tiny little house with a basement apartment, and it was marketed for $110,000. And I knew it had to be worth more than that. And I found out this house was worth $150,000. And my coach basically helped me buy this home. And when I bought it $40,000 below market. I needed a 3.5% FHA down payment of $3,500. I rented out the basement after I bought it, and the basement covered the mortgage. And what my coach showed me is that on just my first deal, I went from paying for rent to living for free. My net worth increased by $40,000, which was great because I was barely making $20,000 a year. And like, my eyes opened. I was like, I just walked into twice as much net worth as me working full-time, 2,000 hours for a year. And so I looked at it like, this one deal is equivalent to where I'm at in my life of 4,000 hours of work in a single deal. And so living for free, my wife and I started getting ahead. And the second deal, Raul, is where everything changed, because my wife was super nervous to support me on the first house. I did it because I knew it was part of being a man. I knew that it was a part of how I was going to provide. But a year later, that house had gone up in value. I went to the bank and got a home equity line of credit. Basically, they said, hey, here's a $20,000 line of credit. And I took that line of credit and I bought my next house, $90,000 below market. Like, it was a bank foreclosure. I caught it on the very first day. It was worth $250,000. I was buying it for $160,000. And the first house gave me the money as the down payment for the second house. So I didn't have to come out of pocket. And my mentor looked at me and said, this is a great deal. This is a 3,000 square foot house. After you rent this out, I was making $600 a month. It was a lease option. So I collected a non-refundable deposit of $3,000 up front. And it was 3 months after owning this house that my wife came to me, and everything changed. She said, Kris, we have a problem. I said, what's the problem? She says, we live in the first house for free. The extra house is paying us $600 extra bucks. And I'm like, what's the problem? She's like, nothing. I'm paying down our credit cards, but I don't know where to put it on our balance sheet, our little, budget. And so I said, well, we need to make a line item for next to my job that my first house pays me $600 a month. My second house pays me $600 a month. And then we use that extra money to pay our bills. And she's like, Kris, if we just bought more homes, you wouldn't have to have a job, because I know you hate your job. And it was in that moment we dreamed, like, how are we going to do this? And we decided that if we bought 20 homes and made 10 grand a month passively, that I would quit my job and wouldn't have to work. And so I had now my course set. I had her support. And by the time I graduated college, we had 25 homes and we were making 150 grand a year, and I quit my job and I didn't have to work. So that's how it all started.
Love it, man. Love it. And you say you're 23 years with the same woman, like with,
yeah.
And see that's the difference that I see now, Kris, with young men and relationships, that they just want to have things right away. They're not willing to work for it. They're not willing to build sweat equity. What your wife did is, you were investing in real estate. She was investing on you.
Yes, she was.
When you were looking at property, she was looking at you, how you were transforming through every deal. Yes. How you were evolving as a man, because the 20-year version of you right now is no longer, like, you're not the same man as you were before. You're not the same man as you met. So as you evolve, we have to dream. As we evolve, the vision has to get bigger. So now you have 25 properties. Now you're retired. Like, tell us what happened. Like, the market crashed, because what happened to me in the 2008 is, like, the market crashed. I mean, I lost millions of dollars, and that's what tested my marriage. That tested my character, tested every aspect of me. How did you manage that part?
So here's crazy. Now it's 2006. The next year I doubled my portfolio to 50 homes. By the time 2008 rolled around, I had 100 homes. And I remember right before the 2008 crisis in October, a buddy of mine, he had a different system. He would buy a house for $1 million worth $2 million. And he would harvest equity out of it. And he would look at me and he's like, Kris, dude, you got to go buy 10 homes to make the kind of money I do on a single home. He was kind of making fun of my system. And then 2008 happened and he lost everything. And I didn't lose a single home, because I followed a system that I created. My homes were bought. And by the way, I wrote a book about this. I give it away for people for free, but I claim there's a best way of making money in real estate, even though it's a little conservative. And basically, I buy single family homes 30% below the median in the best markets. And I hold them for 5 to 7 years, and then I sell them and double the portfolio. In fact, in the last decade, on my last 2,100 rentals, my average annual ROI is 60%. So we've mastered the game of nationwide doing the best real estate. But in the beginning, it was still good enough that when the market crashed, $1 million home became a $600,000 home. A $600,000 home became a $400,000 home. A $400,000 home became a $280,000 home. Well, my average purchase price was like 180 grand, which meant that the market barely went down in my price range, and I just kept them rented and I kept making money. So I was able to survive 2008 very well and do something different. I went into then Phoenix and Vegas and Florida and started buying homes from the auction block at like a third of the price they were once selling for us. So I was buying $300,000 and $400,000 homes for like 100 to 150 grand. And within 5 years, these homes doubled and tripled in value. Within 5 years, I made my investors over $100 million. So 2008 was like a brilliant time for me. It's really where I got my real estate launch.
You know, a lot of men didn't make it through 2008. A lot of real estate investors are no longer in business. So I was almost out of business in 2008, Kris, until I found a webinar. I didn't even know what a webinar was. Somebody sent me a link to invest in foreclosure properties. So I became an asset manager for all these banks, and I became like the go-to guy in my area to be able to buy these foreclosure properties and find this. I used to go to the courts to be able to find these deals, right? But I had to shift my identity, the identity of who I was before and who I was becoming, right? So now, as you shift your identity from being just an investor to being a leader, to being a movement maker, talk to us about like what happened when you realized like real estate is not just the game that I want to play. I want to do something bigger than just real estate. I want to find purpose. Tell us what happened in that transition.
You know, so I built a system that was so predictable. Even today, I've got 2,000 real estate partners. They find me on social media. I get millions of views every week. And then every week I get several people that will say, hey, I'll use my 401k or my IRA and we'll build a portfolio. But Raul, it's actually really boring for me because even though it produces a consistent result, it would be like me being a bricklayer who's laid 2 million bricks and now it's boring for me. There's no challenge. It's not exciting. And so I had to find a way to find new purpose because on the one hand, listen, I can help someone buy a rental today and in 20 years, turn that into a multi-million-dollar portfolio. One home, 5 years later, becomes 2 or 3 homes. Then it becomes 6 or 7. Then it becomes 13. And then it becomes 25. You know, the value is real, but it doesn't light me up anymore. And so I had to reinvent myself. And I think part of being a man in our world today is knowing when your current choice of mission has run its course and it's time to reinvent. So I reinvented myself into a man that started basically doing intervention work with people, doing deep inner work with people, helping people break through their limiting beliefs. And I started a seminar company that we put on 40 major events over 5 years and helped people basically rip their hearts open, go deep inside, figure out their childhood trauma, why they're messing up their marriages, where things are just, where things are not working. And so I basically started doing body transformations, marriage transformations, financial transformations, spiritual transformations. And that lit me up and got me so excited. And it prepared me for my next move that I'm in today.
You know, it's very interesting how God uses certain individuals, Kris, that we have to master the business conversations first in order for us to gain authority so people could listen to the shit that really works. Because the work that you're doing is the inner work, the work that actually matters. But if you were broke, if you're standing in the outside of Madison Square Garden with a note, nobody will pay attention to you. But the fact that you're successful now, people are paying attention. The same thing happened to me. That when I started doing this deep work with men, the imposter syndrome started to kick in, thinking like, who am I to do this type of work? I'm just a real estate investor.
Yeah.
I'm in the real estate game. You know, who am I to actually do this? And I remember when I had my first event in Las Vegas, and I was doing the best impression of Tony Robbins, right? People said I was like the Latin Tony Robbins, right? But I felt like a fraud. I felt like that wasn't authentic. So I started to talk about my trauma, my drinking problems that I had every single day, my dark places where I went through. So what happened to you that you started to say, like, this is my purpose? Was there any trauma you went to? Was there any a moment in your life when you said, fuck, I need to do something different? Because the money conversation I already master. I need to make sure I master the inner game and help others master their inner game.
Yeah. When I retired, I wanted my wife to celebrate me. So we took a trip to Mexico. And she was pregnant with our second child, our son. And we were on this is actually not Mexico, this is Jamaica. We were on a tiny little island called Kokomo. We were walking on the beach. The sun was setting. We were going to walk to like a private dinner on the beach setup. And about 50 feet from dinner, I just paused as the sun sets to look beautifully into her eyes and connect with her. And I was waiting for this romantic gesture or some words of affirmation like, honey, you did it. I'm so proud of you. We're now financially free. You can do what you want with your life. But instead, she looked up at me and she said, well, what are you going to do with your life? And rage ignited my body. I was angry, kind of like, what do you mean? Like, what more do I have to do? Didn't I do it? And now I didn't verbalize any of that, but I felt the anger. And I remember going within and saying, dude, you're really fucked up. Like, there's something wrong inside of you. I was like, you just became financially free. You just graduated college. You live in a custom 10,000 square foot home. You're doing world travel now. You drive whatever cars you want. Like, you did it. You made it. Why are you angry? And that's when I decided that I needed to really do a deep dive into my inner work, which is now almost 20 years ago. And the very first coach that I sat with, I walk into his office, I'm polite, I shake his hand, and he looks at me, he says, man, you're a liar. And I was like, excuse me? He's like, no, you're deeply inauthentic. You're lying. I'm like, what are you talking about? He says, it's clear that you need to be liked by me. You're smiling, you're shaking my hand. It's like you're manipulating me right now so that you can be liked. Oh my gosh. I had no idea what authenticity was, but I came to learn that I had this huge mask that made me so fake. And I spent years of work in programs and masterminds taking these masks off, learning who am I really? And that was the start of the work. And it wasn't for other people, Raul. It wasn't because I was hoping to help other people. It was my real estate business will help people build wealth. I'm doing this because I want to be clean. I want to get this gone. And it's strange though, after doing the work for about a decade, I had learned how to get my body fit, my marriage right, my finances strong, started other businesses, my relationship with God, everything came together. And at some point I felt like I had a level of mastery on my own life, and then I wanted to share it. I was like, other people need this. And that's when I started putting on seminars and events to help them and even help my partners figure out how to break through their limitations to live a better life.
One of the things I think back as I'm listening to you, so many times that I started to invest in myself thinking it was just about me, right? Let me just figure my shit out, right? Let me just break through. Not realizing that God is using men like you, men like me, in order for us to help other people. And that's why I think that most men, they get caught up in the limited beliefs that it's about them. That's about their lives. Like the moment that you start realizing that it's not about you, it's about what God could do through you that truly matters. Yeah. But first he has to break you. First he has to humble you. First he has to tell you, hey, you haven't done this by your own power, only the power that I'm giving you. So where was the humbling moment for you? When was the moment for you that said, fuck man, I'm Kris is not doing shit unless God is working through me. Like, doesn't matter how much money I have, doesn't matter how many people like me. At the core, I need just to accept that God is working through me. Did you have a humbling moment? Did you have a moment that humbled you, that you made a decision?
I think I've had many humbling moments, but perhaps the most humbling was tucking my baby girl in at night as a 17-year-old. I looked down before I left the room and I saw an empty pill bottle. And I knew she had been depressed for 4 years. My wife and I were constantly worried about her. And I knew she was very depressed and in a very dark place. And I picked up the pill bottle and I said, what is this? And she admitted that she took all of the pills. And this rage welled up inside of me. I yanked her by the arm to the toilet, called 911. I had her throw up all the pills. And that was my first time checking her into a mental institute for her mental health because she needed to be on suicide watch. That, as a father, that moment broke me down where nothing mattered. I had already been making money where I thought to myself, more is just more. It's not more meaning. It's not fulfilling. God, what do you want? And when my daughter tried to take her life, that's when I started really questioning everything. And I decided that a lot of what I was doing actually didn't matter. And it started transforming me very aggressively into, today my friends call me Christopher. That's the name that I like to be known by. It's different than my public name of Kris Krohn. Because I'm done with Kris Krohn. That dude wanted to be a billionaire. He wanted more money. He wanted more fame. He wanted more success. He wanted to do it all. There's nothing wrong with that, except that it was no longer my mission and purpose. God's called me to do other things. So that moment was really, that was the moment. Well, actually, she's doing amazing. We got her fully healed. We got her with a shaman woman that was able to take her through some plant medicine that miraculously took her from a near death to wanting to live. And she's been doing great now for the last 2+ years. And 3 months ago, she actually married her sweetheart. And she's happy and doing incredible. And it's this great, great victory. But I will tell her from time to time, thank you for trying to take your life. That was for me. I needed that moment. And we've bonded over that.
I truly believe that our kids, Kris, come to our lives so they could help us evolve. Because without our kids, our life will be, at the end, just meaningless. And the fact that you went through this situation is God was using your daughter to wake you the fuck up, to help you see this is no longer your purpose, Kris. You're no longer Kris, you're Christopher. It's like going from Saul to Paul. Yes. I had a similar experience with my son and my daughter when when I was the one drinking every single day, when I was the one, getting up in the middle of the night. And that's when I looked in my son's eyes and he helped me remember. My daughter helped me remember. And that's the moment that I saw they will not know a sedated man, because that's what I was. I was a sedated man. And I vowed to figure my shit out, to find what I call the edge, to find like what gives me that edge. And after doing this type of work for the last decade, come back to the realization that the edge doesn't come from me. The edge doesn't come from you. Like the code that we're talking about is the code that comes from a divine source, something that's bigger than you, something that's bigger than me, something that's bigger than all of us. And unless you tap into that version of you, nothing that you do in life is going to satisfy you. So
It's
brother,
true.
as we close this up, because I know you have to go, what is the one thing that you will tell a man right now that's struggling, a man that feels, man, I lost my edge, I don't have it in me anymore, I may have let down my family, my business, I'm struggling right now. What would you tell that man, or maybe the old version of Kris, when he was in what I call the tunnel? What would you tell him to help him out?
First, I would tell you that you are a child of God. That means that you have infinite worth. And even though you may believe that you are worthless or that you possess less worth than others, my wealth doesn't make me more valuable than you, no more than the next wealthier person does me. The truth is that inside your soul, you came here to grow. So every trial that you're experiencing is on purpose and meaningful to see what you will learn from it and how you will overcome it. I also believe that if you don't face it and overcome it, you get to do this shit again. So this is your opportunity. This is the moment you signed up for. I believe that before you came here, you knew the trials and struggles that you chose into before you got amnesia, which means that you are exactly where you're supposed to be right now at this moment, at this time. And here's the question, will you rise? And don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't go it alone. There's organization and men's group, for example, like The Edge, because the truth is you weren't meant to be a lone wolf. You weren't meant to figure everything out on your own. God didn't give you everything so that you would be able to do everything on a planet unto yourself. The truth is that we have missing pieces that other people have, so that we will learn the truth that together we are stronger than we are alone. We are meant as social creatures to be with our wives, our family, our children, and a brotherhood that will stand with us, unite with us. So have courage, have faith, ask for help, get the help, and rise.
Fucking beautiful. Beautiful, brother. Pleasure and an honor, man. I can't wait to see you at the next Men on the Arena tour, because shit's about to get real, man. More men need help.
Yes, it is.
And they need to know that they're not alone, that if you are quietly dying in desperation, it's on you. Because there are men like Kris, there are men like, many out there that are willing to help you find your code to the edge. So I honor you, brother. Thank you. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Raul. Appreciate you too.
Thank you. If you're ready to find the edge, go to kingscodebook.com to get the latest copy of my book, The King's Code. This book will help you find the clarity, the certainty, and the purpose that you need in order for you to lead with power. Go to kingscodebook.com and find your code to the edge now.